Hey y'all, welcome back to Resilient and Rowdy. This is your host, Jess. And today we have Alex from the Sticky Green Beret. Welcome, Alex.
Hey, thank you so much. Awesome to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you on. So, Alex has a hilarious Instagram account, and I saw the memes and the shenanigans. So, I wanted to have him on the pod and ask him a couple questions about his journey. Alex, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I grew up in Texas. I was actually born in New York and moved to Texas by the time I was like 3 years old. So I consider Texas home. Grew up in Texas, just lifelong athlete, played a bunch of sports in high school, super competitive my entire life, regardless of what it is. After I graduated high school, I bounced around a little bit. I did some school here and some school there. Not college really wasn't for me, just from the standpoint of I thought it was ridiculous that you had to pay all this money and then they're going to take attendance. If I could just pass the test anyways, why did I have to show up? I just couldn't get that together. So I just got to bounce around a whole lot. My parents are great. Love my parents to death. They, growing up, were pretty strict, and I am not a by the rules kind of person, and it's been that way forever. So my parents and I butted heads a lot while I was a kid. When I was about 24, was make amends with my family or don't have a family anymore. And I'm sure it wasn't that way for them, but I felt that way of how I had treated them and what I'd gone through. And I'd always wanted to join the military. And so at 24, I was like, you know what? Now is a better time than ever. I could mend this relationship. It's something I've always wanted to do. Not getting any younger. So I called up a recruiter. I started the process. I originally thought I wanted to be an Apache pilot. My dad's best friend was an Apache pilot, and it was super cool. So I was like, oh, that'd be awesome. I'll do that. And they got me with the 18 X-ray contract. You hear about that all the time. And they were like, hey, you want to be special forces? And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like I could be on the ground doing it. So I was like, yeah, let's do that. I think my recruiter thought I wasn't super smart or what. I think that he thought he got me with the 18 X-ray contract.
Yeah.
I went to MEPS and did all that stuff. I did super well on the ASVAB and super high GT score. And I called him and he actually didn't believe it when I told him the score. And I was like, no, I'm serious. He's, oh, cool. You can have the contract. And I was like, great. So I went to basic, went to airborne, went to selection. Funny story, I was actually in the 2 Weeks in Hell Discovery Channel selection class. So if you go watch that, you can see me in there a couple times.
No way. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's funny. We had no idea what it was. It wasn't like they were like, hey, these people are here from National Geographic or Discovery Channel or whatever it was. So we were just, this is another aspect of selection. There's cameras and people walking around with notepads and stuff. So different experience, but I guess you never really know exactly what you're going to get till you show up. So.
Okay, true. You weren't sure if it was a mind game or something?
Exactly. Everything's a mind game. So we're like, oh, this must be a new mind game. We didn't know. Yeah, exactly. So got selected. I got selected for 18 Delta. So I went through the Delta course.
For those that don't know what that means, can you explain that?
Yeah, so on a special forces team, there's a few different jobs. There's weapons sergeant, communication sergeant, engineer sergeant, medical sergeant, 2 of each of those. And then you have team leadership. And so 18 Delta is a medic. It's some of the most intense medical training on the planet. You go through such a condensed high speed. The textbook drinking from a fire hose is the entire 18 Delta course. And it's a year longer than the other MOSs training wise as well. So you have that extra time there. It's really a grind. It's a very cool experience. The training is incredible, but it is a meat grinder for sure.
So how long total were you in training, from enlisting to the Delta portion?
Man, so I came in April 2008. Okay. And I got to my first team October 2011.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So between then, just training back to back.
Training. I had a recycle in the Delta course because I was in the middle of the Delta course and my dad died unexpectedly. So I had to go home for 30 days to deal with all that and come back right into the course, recycle a class, and pick back up again.
Oh, wow. I'm so sorry. So were they understanding about that? They were...
Absolutely. They're super understanding. Another situation where everyone wanted to give me a ride to the airport. Everybody wanted to do whatever they could to help.
That's good.
And then they just fit me back in the next class and pick up where I left off at.
Okay. And how did you feel about that? You had to deal with the grief of your father and then also just get right back into a very rigorous course.
Yeah, for sure. So some definite mental health stuff there, but really in the distance. I'm the oldest child out of 4. So when my dad passed, I was like, I got to assume this mantle, go home, make sure everybody else is okay. I didn't grieve my dad's passing until 5 years afterwards when I had gotten out. It took a lot to get it out of me. And it was a pretty crazy experience. We can talk about that later if you want to. It was pretty crazy. But when I went home, I'll never forget, there's a little like box in the casket where you can put like mementos and keepsakes and stuff. And I put a Special Forces unit patch and a long tab in there and buried my dad with it, even though I hadn't graduated yet. Because I was like, I'm not going to put my dad in the ground with this and not earn it. And so at that moment, I was like, I have to finish. I have to go back. I have to buckle down, finish the Delta course, go to Sage, do all that, and go. So that was like, it was good. It was an awesome motivator for me.
Yeah, that's really profound. You found something to push you, but also to make your dad proud, even though he'd already passed away. I don't know what you believe in, but I think he's been rooting for you since then. That's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
It was hard because, like I said, we had a rocky relationship, but then like when I did this, my dad was so proud of me. So like anytime I would do something in the course or pass a phase or do something, immediately call my dad.
Yeah.
So it was hard from that aspect to where it was like, I can't really call him anymore. But just remembering, okay, he's got this thing in the ground with him. Like we ain't digging him up to get it out. Like
no pressure.
You have to pass now. Like your dad has this. So
yeah. Wow. Jeez. Yeah. That's a lot to carry. But hey, I'm really proud of you. That's a lot to deal with, and you stuck it through and you rocked it. So what was that feeling like, knowing that you had accomplished all of your training and feeling confident and all of that?
Man, two-pronged, honestly. Yeah, it's super awesome to look back and realize like everything you made it through to get there. You walk across the stage and get your beret, and it's super surreal. But like the entire time you're training, you just want to get to a team and do your job. So it's like you look at it and you're like, wow, this is awesome. But you're also haven't done anything yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I have, but like all of that was just to get me here. Now that I'm here, this is where it starts.
Okay. Yeah. That's a really good mindset to have. So when you got to your team, how was that? How is it like being the new guy, even in an SF sector?
So it was honestly awesome. The way it worked out for me was perfect. I came out of the course, I took like my leave or whatever, and then I signed into group. And the battalion that I signed into was deploying in January. So like I showed up in October, we're going to Afghanistan in January. So I'm like, awesome, here we go. And I got put on the Freefall team because of the mission that they had required 2 medics. And I had just graduated as a medic. They only had 1. And so my sergeant major was like, you're not staying on this team. This is for senior guys, but they need you for this mission. And so I got to go in 2012 to Afghanistan and do the commando mission, which is like the cool guy mission. Everybody wants it. You get to fly around in helicopters and it's super fun. And so for me, it worked out great. We went to Afghanistan, had an awesome deployment. It was just an amazing experience. I tell everybody, if they would have just left me in Afghanistan for 15 years, I would have done 20. It's all the garrison stuff that like everyone thinks is so important that like you get back and it's just like mind numbing. It's like they put $2 million of training in me. Why am I picking up cigarette butts for a week? When you're there, you have one job, you know what you're doing. It's easy. The job itself isn't easy, but like the lifestyle is easier, at least for the deployment that I had in 2012. But yeah, I loved it. It was great. And then I came back. And at that point, I thought I was going to Ranger school because Sergeant Major was like, you get back, go to Ranger school, you're a new guy or whatever. And I get back, he basically I was like, so what's up? Am I going to Ranger school? And he's like, you're not a new guy anymore. There's a bunch of people that could use it a whole lot more than you. So instead of going to Ranger school, I got to go to Halo school and become the senior medic on the Freefall team and just stay on that team instead of having to get moved off. So it was awesome.
Yeah, so I think that's way better than Ranger school.
Yeah, like I wouldn't have turned it down. Ranger school is an awesome experience. Part of me wishes that I had gone to Ranger school, but Halo school was awesome, and I got to stay on the team with the guys that I love. So it was definitely the best it could have worked out for me.
Yeah, so you did that until you got out?
No, years back they did like a battalion realignment where they changed the jobs of the battalions, and I was in 4th Battalion, and it became like a different mission set. So if you didn't want to stay there, you got spread back to the other 3 battalions. So I went to 3rd Battalion and I was there for about a year, and then I got out of 3rd Battalion.
Okay. Oh, wait, back to Halo. What made it one of your favorite training schools?
So for me, it's you're getting paid to skydive. Static line is one thing. It's like you fall out of the door and hit the ground. Like that's just what you do. Halo, free fall is just incredible. The free fall, you literally feel like you're flying. Like it's just. I've always said that I'm glad I went to a Halo team instead of a dive team because I like to recreationally dive. I'm pretty sure that would be ruined by the military. But no matter what, full night wall locker jump in the middle of the night, pitch black, you're still skydiving. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a really cool way. I know most people are like hear that and they're just like, absolutely not. Like whether it's in military context or like civilian, they're like skydiving. You hear that joke, like why jump out of a perfectly good plane?
Oh
But
yeah.
after you, I don't know, even if you do it once, it's just like riding in a motorcycle. It's just like a new, different way to take in your surroundings.
Yeah.
It's a very beautiful experience. I'm glad that you enjoyed it too. That's
Yeah.
awesome to hear.
Yeah, it's one thing that I always say, and I feel like the human brain wasn't designed to jump out of a plane at 12,000 feet. So when you get up to the ramp, people think that it's like you're on a roller coaster and you're falling and your stomach hurts and all this stuff, but you're so high up that you can't see really anything on the ground. There's nothing next to you to where it feels like you're just falling.
Mhm.
And to me, it always felt like you're just like stepping into an oil painting. It's like everything is so still and you're up high, and depending on where you're jumping, what the landscape looks like, and then you're just in it. Like it's just this surreal feeling. It's your first jump about this much, and then the more you jump, your field of view opens. But like that first one, you're just got to make it to the ground, and you can't. You're just kind of overwhelming.
Okay, that's awesome. I haven't skydived in a couple years, so now you got me like itching for it.
One last thing, it's crazy too the way that military freefall works. So the first jump that I ever had that you would consider a skydive, like 12,500 feet, I jumped by myself wearing a chute that I packed on the ground before I put it on. So it's like all on you when you go. There's instructors and they're super trained and they could catch you if you mess up, but it's not a tandem. It's not you're like the ramp opens and you're jumping a chute that you packed. So it's a wild way to do it for sure.
Yeah, no pressure. Fuck. That's awesome. Oh, good. So you overall, it seems like you enjoyed your time in the Army.
Absolutely. No, I loved it. Great. Coolest job ever for sure.
Yeah. I think when you join an MOS like that, I think it's more than that. I feel like there's this brotherhood portion about it that really unites what y'all do together. It's really cool to see because it is a small community. Y'all are very supportive of each other and like very uplifting and holding each other accountable and wanting to do great even after service. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, for sure. First, it is definitely a very small community. If you don't know a guy, someone that knows the guy. It's all very close. And it's funny going through the Q course, you'll hear the instructor say things like, "Oh, why would I want you? You're going to wind up on a team getting one of my brothers killed or whatever." And you're just like, whatever, this old man. Yeah, I'm never going to be on a team with him. I show up to my first team and the head cadre from selection was the senior Charlie on my team. So like the guy that you just hated more than anything. I show up and he's the senior Charlie. And what's funny is he and I became best friends and we still are. Him and his wife is a sergeant major. They were in town a couple weeks ago for a wedding and we got to spend the day together. We don't get to see each other often. You would drop anything in a heartbeat, do anything for one of those guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so funny how those things work out.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was quite a shock. We wound up like having our workers build us a spot to live in Afghanistan, and he was my guy. But that second that I walked in the team room, I was like, "You've got to be kidding
me!" You were like, "Is this another mind game?"
Yeah, seriously. Are we still getting selected?
Okay. So, you said you entered in 08.
Yep, I went in 08 and I got out in 2015.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay. So, and you did just one deployment to Afghanistan, or you did?
I did one deployment to Afghanistan, and then I did a CNT, which is like counter narcotics training, and we went to Kyrgyzstan and we spent a couple months training there, like drug interdiction, border police, and some tactics. And we all went as a team and we got mountain level 3 certified, and they wanted to do some mountain stuff. And it was pretty cool. We set up like a 200-foot rappel for them, which I thought was like the coolest thing ever. Spent a couple months. We actually lived on base with them and trained them. That was a really cool experience too, for sure. It's a little more of that like non-deployment kind of SF deployment where you're out and it's your guys and wearing civilian clothes and going out at night and stuff. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, Kyrgyzstan. I know where that is, but I didn't know.
Yeah. And honestly, it's funny. They like love Americans there.
Oh, that's good.
And it's gorgeous. Like the biggest lake in Central Asia is there. I think it's a big like resort lake, and it's gorgeous. I would go back as a vacation for sure.
Yeah. That's surprising, but not when you see it. I think most people just assume like they hear like the stand and they're just like,
Yeah,
oh,
for
what?
sure.
Yeah. Anyway. That's
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
definitely.
Promote some travel in this platform. But okay, dude, that's so awesome. I'm glad that you enjoyed your time. You did some really awesome things. You're still enjoying and connected with the brotherhood. But throughout all those years, I think what I want to ask is, was it ever so difficult that you thought you couldn't continue or push through, or you were like, this is it, I'm done, I'm getting out, or anything like that? Did you have any of those moments?
Yeah, for sure. Towards the end, and that was like the reason why I wound up getting out. Is it's hard to see people get passed up for promotion that you think should be leading soldiers, and then other people get promoted that you're just like, why in the world? And I was with some leadership that I basically saw my career being stifled. It's really hard to go from being on a team and training and shooting and going on train ups and doing stuff to go to be an instructor, recruiter, schoolhouse time. And the end of my team time got squashed by some less than favorable leadership. I worked my way into a job that I didn't want, but I was doing so well at it that it was hard for them to let me go. And that prevented me from doing what I really wanted to be doing or what I thought I should be doing. And at that point, I saw my career go in that direction. And that was the final decision for me to get out.
Okay.
And it, from a physical or a deployment or anything like that, no, you don't even really, me personally didn't even really think about it from a standpoint of quitting. That was never like really an option. You just do it. Everyone else is doing it too, and you do it. There's going to be one guy standing at the end. It's going to be me. But again, the day-to-day political leadership stuff like that stuff will start to wear on you when you see it go in a direction you don't really like.
Yeah, I know that it obviously has a lot of like physical and maybe sometimes mental effects being a Green Beret, but I don't always hear that too often about that stuff happening. So that's like disappointing to
Yeah.
hear. And I'm sorry that happened because I feel like y'all are looked at as professionals, the example, the standard, or above the standard, if anything. So to hear that, is that what you meant earlier by like dealing with garrison? That was just a whole other world for you to sit with?
It would be stuff like you've been out training for 16 hours shooting on a range all day. You come back, it's 10 o'clock at night, and you go into the PX to get a Gatorade or something.
Mhm.
And over the course of training, one of your boots has become unbloused, and some dude, just like some butterbar, just dresses you down in the PX for your uniform being fucked up. And you're just like, dude, I trained more today than you will in your entire career. I just want a Gatorade. Is that like super important right now? And I get it, it's important. It's the rules or whatever, but it's like that kind of stuff will just wear on you. And I think they've tried to get some more insulation from that. I know like at least the third group area was moving further away from like the main posts and stuff like that, but you're never going to get away from it fully. It's the
Mhm.
military, it's political, it's going to be that way.
Yeah. So you decided that with the struggles that you were having with like leadership, it was just in your best interest to get out. Did you feel like you had done enough to an extent? And if this was the way that things were going to continue, you're just like, this is unexpected. There's more for me out there.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, the war, the good deployments were wearing down, and that's what you joined. If you joined at the time that we joined or whatever, that's what you wanted to do. And yeah, there are tons of, at that point, I was 35, 36, I don't, somewhere around there or whatever, like not an old man. It was that make or break. It's, do I do 12 more or do I go do something else right now? And I went to go do something else.
Around that time, you said you got out in 2015. What did transitioning out of the army look like for you?
So that was one thing that was super cool about being in group is it was like really easy. I was taking a lot of time off for the months prior to actually getting out just because I had time saved up, and my first level leadership there was actually really good dudes that I really liked. So they were helping me do whatever I needed to do. I did the whole soldier for life or whatever that was, and to me, it just seemed like that's really more of a check the block thing for the people that are putting it on or the people that are mandating it. There was some decent information, but they leave a lot out. There, I think a lot of soldiers get out thinking, "Oh, what am I going to do? Oh, there's a couple things here or whatever." But there really are so many resources for soldiers once they get out that I think if you're going to mandate it for people to go to that thing, it could be a whole lot better.
Did you feel like people try to like psych you out of getting out, or were they supportive of that journey for you?
Luckily, no. I think a lot of people understood it. And again, like you said, the SF Brotherhood is pretty supportive. I think it would have been different if like my team's about to deploy and I'm like, no, I'm getting out. It was a time where not really much was going on around where I was at. And I wasn't the only one getting out then. There was, I won't call it like an exodus, but there was a big group of people that got out around the same time I did within that couple years. And I think that's maybe a natural occurrence as like op tempo slows down and there isn't as much war and people are seeing other opportunities and things like that. So there are a bunch of dudes that got out around 10 years instead of doing 20.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. I feel like that's the fun process of it all is just seeing like what y'all do afterwards. Is I feel like y'all are put in some really good schools. You're surrounded by some good leadership and y'all are always like trying to learn, evolve, improve yourselves and like building those blocks of resiliency that you can take with you wherever you go to
Yep.
next. So did you know what you wanted to do afterwards or were you like
Yeah, I thought I was going to go to school. I thought I was going to go to school and then wound up getting an unexpected divorce. So that kind of derailed that. Also, not super uncommon in the community, I don't think. Yeah, no, it was a wild story, completely out of the blue. I'm much better for it now. I'm remarried with a wonderful wife who has a great family and we get along great. So it's everything happens for a reason.
yeah.
But I just like tipped what my plans were. And so I went back to Austin, which is where I grew up. And so I have tons of friends there. So I started working like weekend security at bars, like my friends and stuff like that. Just got to bounce it around, doing some of that. After a few years, let's see, was it a few years? Yeah. So after a couple of years, I was just like, what am I doing? I'm like, I have all this potential. I could be doing anything I want. What am I doing? So I was like, what's a major part of my life? What do I enjoy? What do I want to do? And at this point, I was using cannabis regularly and it was something that had like really helped me in multiple areas. So I was like, let's see if I can do that. Let's see if I can do that for a job. Packed up in a car and drove to Oregon. And one of my friends had been out there for a while before me. He was like, dude, there's tons of jobs out here. Just come out, come find a job. So I went out there not really knowing what I was going to do. I met up with my friend that night and the guy that he worked with, and they didn't have any job openings, but they're like, oh, you can sleep at the farm tonight. And that was like a super surreal experience. I woke up the next morning and it was like weed as far as the eye could see, like just plants like as big as you, thousands of them. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. It just so happened that a couple people didn't show up that morning and I was standing there and they're like, get to work. I wound up that day helping harvest. I hadn't even been in Oregon for 12 hours and wake up and start harvesting. And that whole period of years is that's like just some of the wildest experiences. I had no idea what to expect. And if I had, it wouldn't have come anywhere close to what it was. It was the legitimate Wild West out there. It was just crazy.
I love that. But no, like I really admire you're just willing to just get out there and just go with the flow. Sometimes I feel like when you like overthink or you're like too in your head about it, you hesitate, but you went for it. Wait, were you familiar with cannabis before?
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in Austin, Texas, so it's been around forever.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I thought it was
not
like
legally, but Austin's a huge hippie town.
okay,
so
okay.
it's been there forever.
I got
But honestly, when I got out, I was having sleep issues and not like wake up screaming in the middle of the night. Basically, like I was having dreams and I would go through a process of trying to solve these dreams. So like instead of getting like good restful sleep, my brain was just like solving puzzles all night. I'm like trying to maneuver these situations and stuff. So I wasn't getting good sleep. So they prescribed me this medication. I can't remember the name now, but like what an off-label use for it was like to help with sleep.
Okay.
One of these rare side effects in like 1% of people was that it could tighten the muscles in your neck. So it tightened the muscles in my neck, and it was so bad that it like cut off all the push muscles on the right side of my body. So I like lost half of my tricep. I lost like upper third of my pec. And so at that point, I've always been like not a big pharmaceutical guy, which is funny being a medic. For me, it's always been path of least invasive to most invasive, to include taking medication and stuff. Like
Okay.
it's just not my favorite. So at that point, I was like, wow, this medication was just trying to help me sleep, and it messed me up even worse. So I started looking at weed, and I started sleeping great. I also noticed that it would take the edge off for me. It basically, I say it helps me not care about things that I don't need to care about. So
Yeah.
like when you operate at a high level all the time, like your brain is just constantly looking at stuff. Like my wife thinks it's crazy. Like we'll go do something, and 2 hours later I'll be like, oh yeah, that dude in the red shirt, that was what she's like, how do you remember this stuff? And I'm like, I'm just like casually observing all the time.
Yeah, it's
And so
exhausting.
yeah, and it will get exhausting. And I just realized that like smoking would help just blunt that. Not to make a pun there, but it would take the edge off of the
Yeah,
stuff that I didn't need to care about. And so it just made living my life like a little bit easier, not as high strung all the time.
that's really good.
And it's funny because now, like recently, in the last few months, like tons of stuff is coming out as far as how good weed is for veterans with PTSD. I will say this, it's not a one size fits all solution for everybody. For some people it's not good. I would never be like, you need weed. Like some people can benefit from it, some people don't.
Yeah.
But I think that everybody should have the opportunity to see if it will benefit them.
Yeah.
Like it's everyone should have access to try. It's again from path of least invasive to most invasive. It's a plant. You can take it in ways that aren't smoking, but you can eat it, whatever. But to be able to have that resolve or help some of your issues, I think everybody should have the opportunity.
Yeah, I'm really glad to see that it's being destigmatized and talked about more. And I'm glad that you said it too. Just at least give it a shot. It's not for everybody. Also acknowledging that it needs to be like a very balanced use. Just like anything, it can definitely be, what's the word, abused.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think, and I appreciate you talking about that, because I struggled with that for a little bit, like learning that balance. And thankfully there was like really good quality CBD where I was at in Colorado, but that was something that I had to like check myself with. It helped a lot for me as well. But then it got to the point where it was just too much, especially like on the weekends and stuff. Did you ever have that struggle, or were you able to have a good relationship with it?
Yeah, so I feel very blessed to be able to say that I feel like I don't have an addictive personality. I'm really good at recognizing when I don't like something about myself or the way that I'm like living my life, and I'm able to snap myself out of it pretty quick. Even when I got out of the military and I started working at bars and I was drinking all the time, and I was
Mm.
just like, you know what, this is ridiculous. Like I don't need to be drinking this much, and I just quit cold turkey and I stopped drinking, and I didn't have a drink for 2 years, and and then it got to the point to where people were like, oh, we're so proud of you for your sobriety. It's sober Alex. And I was like, no. That's not what any of this was about. I'm just taking a time out. So at that point, I actually had a drink one night just so people would leave me alone. I was like, but it gave me such a better appreciation. I think once you start, a lot of people start and then they just don't stop. And
Mhm.
then if you can get to a situation where you do stop, even just temporarily, shake yourself out of it, you're like, oh, A, this may not be the best thing, but B, like for most people, again, and it's not everybody, everyone's different, but you can have a healthy relationship with alcohol. Like
Oh yeah.
now, I maybe have 2 drinks a month. And it's if I am having a good burger somewhere and I want to have a shiner, I'll do
Mhm.
that. Or if we're going out for some special occasion and I want to have a couple, I will. But it's not one of those things where it's I had one. Okay, now I'm going to be naked at 3 o'clock in the morning in everyone's front yard. Like I could just have a couple drinks and go home and get a good night's sleep and get up and do what
Yeah.
I need to the next day. You could do the same thing with weed too. If you decide you're going to smoke yourself into a pit and eat all the donuts, then you can do that and be the least productive person ever. But if you recognize that and you're like, okay, maybe I won't smoke before 5 o'clock at night. And that way, at the end of the day, I can reward myself. I can unwind, whatever. There's different ways
Yes.
to do it. And again, that's where I think it's different for every person.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just having that conversation first so that people can recognize that it's not just something that to take lightly. It's something that you can be smart with, that can help you and make your like quality of life a little better. Or yeah, you can be unproductive and eating a whole bag of donuts. So
Absolutely.
the choice is yours.
Yeah,
So,
right. No, choose your own adventure.
yeah, but so what was that like moving from Austin to Oregon? What was the culture like over there? You said you were like in culture shock.
Yeah, it was crazy. So the area in Oregon that I was at is like a weird area also. The biggest town that people know or city is Medford, but I was like in the Grants Pass, Cape Junction area. But that area of the state, so like Southern Oregon and Northern California have like forever wanted to form this state called the state of Jefferson.
Okay.
Because Northern California hates Southern California's politics and the
Mm-hmm.
Southern Oregon hates the Portland politics. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's really weird because you'd be like out in the woods and every house would have a Trump sign, but they're all growing weed and they all love their guns and they all have Trump. It was just like super weird. Like I was like, my people.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was strange. And it literally was the Wild West. I wound up had this crazy thing happen where this farm, their security company guy got rolled up with a bunch of cash and then they didn't want to let him back on the farm. And so they had no security. And someone was like, oh, he used to be a Green Beret. He could do it. And they were like, would you want to do this? And I like thought about it. I was like, yeah, I could do it. It was pretty decent money. And I actually had one of my Green Beret friends come out and I hired some local guys and ran security for this massive grow, thousands and thousands of plants, 144 acre farm. It was huge.
Wow.
And the sheriff, like the local sheriff, kind of gave us a brief. And he was like, so if someone comes on your property, you got to shoot them. And he was like, but if you kill them, don't expect us to be out anytime soon. It'll probably be 2 or 3 days before we can get out there because we don't have the manpower to just be going around picking up dead bodies.
Oh.
So it was like legit, like the Wild West.
Wow.
It was motorcycle gangs and every seedy group you could think of. It was an experience for sure. And just this little mountain town in the middle of nowhere. It was crazy.
So is that like part of the culture, or is that just like the area that you were in?
Probably a little both. It's probably a little bit more there. It's Mecca. It's like the Emerald Triangle. You watch Murder Mountain. I don't know if you ever saw that on Netflix. Like I've been there. I've been to Trinity Pines to pick up clones. And like it's a little more heavy on the culture there. But I think that when the legalization started happening, those are the people that have been in it from the beginning, like the OGs. And so when it would go legal somewhere else, they're going to go there and try and set up their shop too. And so they bring that culture with them, but it's definitely super ingrained in Southern Oregon.
Yeah. Okay. And then how long did you do that for? Like, how was that? Was there like good things, like successes?
For sure. There? Definitely. I was there for I came back, right? So when COVID hit and was getting crazy, Oregon was like one of the craziest states. And so like their governor was going wild. And I was like, man, if I don't get out of here, like I might get stuck here. Like they might close the border because nobody knew what was going on. I'm like, Oregon might close down the state. And so I got like the last U-Haul I could out of there and loaded everything up and I left. That was early 2020. So that first farm that I woke up on, I wound up like living in a tent outside for a while. And then I wound up like moving into the attic of this house, kind of working my way up. And actually everyone got fired from that farm. Someone else bought it and they showed up and just like blanket fired everyone the next day.
Oh shit.
And so me and my friend, we were like, we don't care about these guys. Like we don't have any loyalty to them. And so we went and we found the new boss and we were like, hey, can we work for you? And he was like, want to work for us? And we're like, yeah, we don't care about those guys. Like we just want to work.
Yeah.
So they gave us a shot. And long story short, like a year and some change later, I actually was running that farm, living in the big house in the master bedroom. It was my farm. I was calling the shots every day. Like, and it was cool to see that come full circle. And it was just from a standpoint of getting up and working hard every day. And if that's the only way you know how to work, you're just naturally going to outwork other people.
Yeah.
I saw that. So caveat. When I got out of the military, I worked for ESPN for a little bit.
Oh,
one of my best friend's wives, she worked in operations for ESPN. So I started doing college football games and I showed up the first week and I just worked like normal. Like they're paying me, I'm here to work. And so I did everything they said. And I look around and everyone else is privileged kids that their parents got them the job. They're sitting around on their cell phones or talking to their friends and stuff. And it's just, I didn't do anything super crazy. I just worked my normal amount. after that first week, they were like, get him back every week. He's the best. Like he worked so hard. And I was like, not really, just more than them. So it's that attitude of do your best all the time. It doesn't matter what it is. So like it's your name on the line, do it. I took that with me to Oregon, and no matter how stupid the job was, or a lot of times it was cold and miserable, you didn't want to do it. People just wouldn't show up to work, but we'd show up and work. So got a lot more opportunities that way, my way through the ranks. It was cool. It was a great experience for sure. You could never recreate it. It was really cool.
Yeah, I think that's really awesome to see you like genuinely work from the ground up and carry yourself very humbly, especially after doing something really cool like being a Green Beret. But I think that a lot of y'all have a lot of like humbleness to you and obviously amazing work ethic. So it's really cool to see you sleep in a farm and end up like running that shit. Like you said, on the house, master bedroom, like you're running operations. That's awesome. So was that hard for you to pick up and leave? Did you take that with you back to Texas, or what was that like?
Yeah, so it had expired. It was time to go there, but I now had this awesome skill set that every year more states were going legal. I went back to Texas because that was home base, but by that point, Oklahoma had already gone legal. And I went back and I was like, all right, am I going to go work somewhere else? Am I going to do my own thing? Ever since I got out of the military, my goal was like, don't have another boss. Like work until you could just be your own boss. Because for me, time and experience has always been so much more important than money. Like I'm the guy that'll spend my last dollar going to a concert and sleep in the parking lot. It drives my wife crazy because she's like, we need to be saving. And I'm like, for what? I could get hit by a bus tomorrow and miss the concert.
Oh my God.
And so that's like how I've always lived my life is I want the experience. I want the time. So for me, not having a boss allowed me more freedom over my time to be able to pick and choose what I want to do and really have control of my life.
Where does that stem from? I'm curious. You said like you could get hit by a bus.
Yeah.
Is it because like life's short?
For sure. And I think it's obvious. It's like when you're in the community and experience a lot of death, whether it's in war, whether it's the effects of afterwards, losing my dad, losing a couple of my best friends. Yeah, like there is no guarantee. And time is the only thing that they're not making any more of. One of my best friends in the entire world, a few months before he was killed, he bought a car that he had always wanted. And he got to drive it for a few months. And I think about that all the time because I'm like, if rather than getting that car, he had been like, oh, I should save this for a rainy day or whatever. And then he goes and gets killed and he never had the car. Wouldn't you have rather had the car for a few months? And I know that like other people look at it differently and who's to say who's right and who's wrong or whatever. But for me, like that experience and control over my time is like the most important thing for me.
Yeah, I really respect that because life is short. You never know. I'm sorry to hear about your friend. It's good to see that you took something from that and you're running with it. So do you apply that to like multiple aspects of your life or like just in general?
Yeah, it's pretty in general. Like I said, it like drives my wife crazy, but she's learning and she's amazing. She puts up with way more than most people ever would. But I guess that just comes with the package. But she's great about it. But yeah, really, I'll buy concert tickets for something 8 months in advance and figure out, hey, we're going to figure it out when it gets here or whatever. But it's just for me, it's chasing experiences. Even when I was out in Oregon, the work was one thing, but like every day when we got off work, we'd go to the mountains and we'd climb mountains and see sunsets and find waterfalls and do all that. You could sit around and play video games all day if you wanted, or you could go outside and see something real, you know?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Also, yeah, Oregon is gorgeous. So like you got to take advantage of it while you're there. Around that time, did you also maybe get introduced to psychedelics?
Yeah, definitely. So Oregon really, like I said, I wound up there because I wasn't really sure what I was doing with my life and was like, all right, need to change something. And in Oregon, I was super blessed with an awesome community to like help with the internal stuff, not the job stuff so much, but what's going on inside. I wound up studying under a Blackfoot Native American. His name was Gary. Awesome dude. He's a former like outlaw motorcycle guy, still known in the community as the guy that like don't mess with his friends or there'll be a bunch of scary dudes at your door, but also would host sweat lodges and would work with like the young men in the community. He was that guy that you could call Gary in the middle of the night and go over and sit with him and he'd listen to you and stuff. He helped me a lot with kind of learning to slow things down. I got to go over there and I would spend days just chopping wood to build a fire for a sweat lodge. It has to be perfect. It has to be hot enough. You got to different layers and find the right stuff to build it with. So it's just a lot of time by yourself, just like sitting out there thinking, and then was able to through that, that's one thing that I'll caveat this whole thing by saying is that like psychedelics are great and they're great tools and can teach you so much, but as important or more important are the community around it. The most important part of any kind of psychedelic journey is the actual reintegration, which is where you talk with other people. A lot of times you'll come out of an experience and some of it or all of it may not make any sense to you. And if you just sit there and dwell on it, you can drive yourself crazy. But sharing with people and having other people talk about their experiences or what they think your experience means to them can really be eye opening. So my Oregon community was fantastic. I found a great community of people, and I had the opportunity. I've sat with ayahuasca 4 times. I've done TB ceremony with peyote, psilocybin mushrooms, LSD, DMT, and they are some of the best tools in it. I'll sit around and talk about that forever.
Yeah, I love that for you.
We touched earlier about, and I was like, oh, we'll come back and talk to this. But like when I finally grieved my dad, I took like a heroic dose of LSD on a beach on New Year's Day in Northern California. And I wound up like stripping my clothes off, jumping in the water, screaming, crying. It was just this like insane emotional release of 5 years of grief over my dad's
Mm.
passing that had just built up inside. And I had been to therapy before, talked with therapists or whatever, and I had come to the conclusion, and I think that a lot of people would agree with this. But first off, like the human mind in general is pretty powerful. Then you have guys that have been through the training and experiences that some of us have been through, and it makes your mind even tougher and more closed. Like your BS meter is off the charts. And so I go and sit in these sessions, and as soon as someone would start to say something that you don't like, you're just whatever, they're a quack. They don't know what they're talking about on it. And so that experience did for me what a lifetime of therapy never could. It's you don't control that journey. And basically, if there's something that you need to deal with, it will slam that right to the front of your mind and basically force you to deal with it. There's no getting away from it. And after I got out of the water, I sat on the beach with my dog and like the whole world turned gold. And I had this crazy feeling of peace. And I just sat there for like probably an hour with my dog. And it was just the most beautiful, gorgeous experience ever. And like I said, there's no amount of therapy in the world that could have gotten that emotional release out of me. I know that about myself. For some people, it may work, but for me, I needed that.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love to hear that. It's almost like you were like mentally, emotionally, physically clothed, like
Yeah.
liberated
Yeah.
from those shackles of grief. And I couldn't agree more. I'm all about traditional and modern medicine to an extent, but when I was introduced to that, I had the same kind of stereotypes in mind. Oh yeah, is it just like getting naked in the desert and like drinking this nasty tea or something?
Yeah.
I'm glad that you brought up reintegration because anybody could just take psychedelics and just have fun with it and dance naked. But
Yeah.
it's sitting with those difficult things, like you said, that in traditional therapy, you can control what you tell your therapist. And sometimes that's good to get the baby steps. But I think you said the grief of your father's passing for a
Yeah.
couple years and just or not even dealing with it, like suppressed
Yeah.
it.
Just put it away.
And then the psychedelics, it really does. It puts that, and that's what happened to me too. It's just, ooh, your deepest wound, boom, right there. Like, where you can't run.
Yeah.
And it's a very humbling experience. And I'm glad to see that you worked through it. Do you still have your struggles today? Are they just not as bad? What's the before and after look like for you with that?
So it's funny, it leads me to my next point or whatever, but you hear a lot about in psychedelics, people are like, oh, it's a bad, you have a bad trip. Oh, what if I have a bad trip? The way that I use psychedelics as a tool is I do that on purpose. If I have something that my conscious mind it's nagging at me and I know I'm like pushing it away or whatever,
Okay.
then I'll be like, all right, time to deal with this. And then I'll have a psychedelic trip and I make that first part uncomfortable for me because that's my tool. It's like my own therapy for myself. I
Yeah.
know I need to deal with this, but I'm not. I can recognize that I'm not, and that will force it to happen. The first hour or two can be uncomfortable as you're sifting through it or whatever, but like the beautiful part of it to me always seems to be more beautiful when you've earned it. But you did the work at the beginning, you
Oh,
dealt
yeah.
with the uncomfortable, you got through it, or at least to a point to where you're happy sitting with it, and then you get to just enjoy the good part.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's like constantly a thing that I'm like chasing is like the weight being lifted off your shoulders and being able to sit more presently and positively with it, or just sit with it in general. I was just talking with somebody before that not everything has to be positive or negative.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it just is. And that's like a level of peace that's really nice to sit with after struggling with certain things for a while. So with that being said, do you ever find yourself like journaling or like doing something creative or like getting back out into nature to keep that momentum going?
Yeah, for sure.
Like the sense of healing that you felt and taking those lessons and using them to continue that vibe, like that
Absolutely.
frequency, I guess is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. Do you find yourself doing stuff like that? Or are you better like able to take care of yourself, live a more balanced life because of the progress that you've made through psychedelics?
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely think that whether it's placebo or not, I think that for the week afterwards, I still ride a high. It's
Mm.
not, I can't feel it. I'm not, but it's there, that like afterglow that you've had a beautiful experience and it's still with you. And I think that does stay with you. And definitely, I'm more motivated to get outside, to do music, to do things like that. But then also, another indicator is when I feel that kind of waning off and I'm not doing as much and I'm
Mm.
whatever, then I'm like, okay, maybe it's time again. Maybe there's something that's dragging me down that I need to deal with or I'm not dealing with. So it is like a good kind of gauge for life where knowing that I can give myself that reset makes me conscious of when maybe I need it. As
Mm.
opposed to if you don't have that outlet, you may just constantly pack things down. There's no way to get rid of it. It just adds and adds. I have that release valve to where if I'm like, oh, I'm getting bogged down, what's going on? I'm like, okay, cool, time for a reset.
Yeah, yeah, I like that self-awareness. That's really good to have. So before today, I asked my audience if they had any questions for you. Oh my God, some of them.
I can only imagine. I reposted it to my story, so I'm sure you probably got all
Yeah.
kinds of ridiculous stuff. But
Yes, and thank you for doing that. I appreciate
yeah,
that actually, but that kind of ties into something I wanted to ask you. So, your Instagram page, big fan, obviously. I also noticed that you're a Grateful Dead fan, but I think one of your friends or followers, he ask him how and when he got into the Grateful Dead. And I wanted
whew.
to ask you that because you said you were talking about concert tickets, and I had
Mhm.
noticed before that you'd gone to a couple really cool shows. So, one, I love that for you. You're out there living your life and you're a big music person. So, but I personally also want to know that too,
Yeah,
because especially like our age, it's nice to see that there's a younger fan base to
for
that. So,
sure.
yeah. So, yeah, how and when did you get into the Grateful?
Man, so I've been into the Grateful Dead since high school. I, growing up in Austin, Texas, had such an amazing opportunity with music. There's
Yeah.
just so many shows all the time. It was back when all the good venues were around. I think I saw Phil and Friends for the first time when I was like a sophomore in high school. It was just every weekend there were shows to go to. There were times where we'd get out of football practice and like our two friends that didn't play football would pick all the players up in the parking lot and we'd drive as fast as we could to the venue. It was just the whole culture was music. I started listening to Jerry and Grateful Dead stuff when I was a kid, when I was in high school. I have played the piano since I was like 8 years old. I have a
Mm.
piano in my living room. My music taste has been all over the place since I was a kid. Before I had a music taste of my own, my parents were buying me the music that they liked so I could play it for them. So I grew up playing Billy Joel and Elton John and all that stuff. And I still love it. I play it all the time today. But I feel super blessed because of that to have such a wide range of music that I enjoy.
It's a lot
So
of fun.
yeah, it is for sure. And luckily, I married someone that likes the Grateful Dead too, because my whole living room is covered in artwork, and I
That's
have huge
amazing.
vinyl collection, and yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. It's just such like really good, easy listening, feel good
Oh yeah,
music. A lot of people don't understand why I like it. And I'm just like, why not? When you open up your world to music, it's limitless. So why hold yourself back? But
and
okay.
it's another great community too.
Yeah, it
Like it's a
really is.
great group of people to be surrounded by. It's funny. The guy, my friend that performed our wedding ceremony, my wife and I actually met him on lot at a Dead and Company show
No way.
like a year before, and it was funny because he had a Steely tattooed on his calf and it had Ranger Battalion flash in it. I was
Mm,
like, wait a second. First, I asked him, I was like, were you a vet? And he gave me that. I don't want to talk about being a vet, like whatever. But then I was like, were you in Ranger Battalion? He was like, Ranger
yeah.
Battalion. So then we hung out the rest of the time, became good friends. We went to a festival together. We're actually going to a 3-night run of Joe Russo's Almost Dead in the spring with them out to New Orleans and stuff. And it's just that same community where you just like, hey, you look like a friend. Do you want to be a friend? And then he's performing our wedding ceremony.
I love that. Yeah, the community is so wholesome, just so much love, and it's a different vibe that you don't always get with different like other genres of music. Thank you for that. Some of these are, let's see. All right. Oh my God. All right. Where are you at with the Tim Kennedy situation? If you don't want to answer, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. Man, I honestly don't even know how to answer that. Clearly, I'm not supportive of it. I think that there's a lot that has been said that clearly isn't true, whether it's embellished or not. I think that there are easy ways that he could dispel some of these things with paperwork or whatever. I think the worst part for me about it is like the continued double down, the kind of, is it all just going to go away? I think that there are some answers that he needs to give one way or another.
Just be clear, like a clear answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Even like the kind of like apology, non-apology type things, it doesn't really clear anything up. And yeah, I guess that's where I'm at with it. I think a clear, actual, with receipts, factual clearing up of the things that have been misstated. Because the bottom line is the way it stands right now, and the thing that's so frustrating about it all is the way that it makes the regiment, the way that it discredits regular veterans, not even in the community. I think it's really sad that a guy would have an awesome story from combat, say an infantryman has a cool story from combat, and he tells it and it's awesome, and people should be being like, wow, that's great. But it's not 50 grenades and confiscating AKs. So then people are like, oh, who cares about that? Did you hear what Tim Kennedy did? And it's no, these people's stories are fantastic also.
Yeah.
They deserve to be heard and have recognition as well. I think it paints the regiment in a way that we're not. Like, from what I heard from the podcast or whatever, it makes us look like a bunch of no emotion control, murderous cowboys out for vengeance or whatever. And that's just not true. It's not who we are. That's not what our mission is. It's not what we've been selected for in personality traits. Like, it's just not true. And I think that makes the regiment look bad. And then in turn, I have friends that have given, we all gave a ton. Some of us gave everything. I have friends that aren't here anymore, and it stands to discredit them and the job that they were doing and everything that they worked for as well.
I think that was a really well put together answer. And I think that's just what everybody wants. It's not obviously the drama and the shenanigans and the whole flock of chickens are just squabbling online, right? But
hey, and I'm still gonna have fun with it. That's what I'm here for. I'm a meme page, so they're gonna keep coming. So
absolutely. But as someone like yourself, like a former Green Beret, that's all you want. It's just nothing more complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's just clear the air. With receipts. Yeah, I appreciate that answer, because I think a lot of people just get turned off. They just assume that it's just like the Brovet community just like popping off, but it's just accountability at the end of the day.
For sure. I've had a couple people ask me about it from that standpoint, and they're like, oh, it's just vets tearing down other vets. And I'm like, no, like, we have a responsibility to police our own. I'm not just a random guy with an opinion. Like, we've been there. I have a personal relationship with him? No. But I have close personal relationships with some of his best friends, people in his chain of command I've worked with before. So it's not me armchair quarterbacking it. It's accountability. Like you said, if we don't hold them accountable, who is? And then it turns into this like double-edged sword where people are like, oh, you're just jealous, you're tearing him down, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm not trying to be this guy. I'm not jealous of what he has. Good for him. If you earn it legitimately, go for it. But there needs to be accountability for it.
Yeah, I agree. And that's, as just somebody that's just watching it all go down, that's just something that it's like a moral and like a principle thing. It's just accountability. Don't put yourself out there if you're, one, not going to be willing to be scrutinized, and two, if you're not willing to hold yourself accountable. I think he should just go out and just say, hey, yeah, I'm trying to like Hollywood glamorize the whole experience, but I also don't know if these are just like lies that he's telling himself either. So I don't know. It's weird. Again, like, y'all do some really awesome shit. There's no need to lie. So That's
And him
nice.
most of all. Dude's career
Yeah.
on paper is super incredible.
Yeah.
Not just the military stuff, post-military,
Yeah.
UFC, humanitarian stuff. There's so much good there. It's like unnecessary.
Yeah. Okay. Another question you got was, if you had the chance to pick any other special operations group from other branches, which would you pick and why? Or are you happy with being a Green Beret?
First of all, I was super happy with being a Green Beret for sure. Yeah, I loved the job. I loved everything about it. I got to learn so much cool stuff. I got to do so much cool stuff. I loved it. One of my best friends in the world right now is a former SEAL that when we were in the medic course together, we got along super well. I see him all the time. He's a PA up at the VA in Washington, D.C. now. And to me, that was always like a younger dudes thing. Like those guys, like there was like 18, 19-year-olds, and these dudes were just like the most fit, do 30 pull-ups, whatever. But what I liked the most about SF was that when we were deployed, everything being bottom driven, exactly why you're going to do whatever you're going to do. It wasn't like command was like, hey, go action this target, and then you just go do it. It's we know why this guy's bad. We talk to these people. This is this. We're going to plan it and do it here. And so it felt more in control and then a better finger on the pulse of the operations you're actually conducting versus having it just be like, hey, go there and do this. So I really like that aspect about it. I like being involved in the planning. I liked knowing what was going on around us. It was nice.
Yeah, I agree. And I can definitely like attest to that same feeling because I remember being a private and it was that like gray area time frame where it's like you couldn't really ask questions, obviously, because I'm a private, but two, you were just told what to do and you're just supposed to do it. But when I know like why I'm doing it, even if it's just simple day-to-day routine, like maintenance or whatever, it makes me feel a little more proud to get it done. There's purpose. It makes it a little less like mundane of just, okay, doing as I'm told. But that was also a time where you couldn't really ask why. And I was pushing a lot, but still, I was like, just tell me why. I'll do what you okay. But yeah, I can definitely see what you mean with that. And I feel like that's why y'all are the professionals that you are. Very calculated. Like how you're saying about what Tim is putting out there. He's making y'all seem like these like willy-nilly, like gung-ho, like Rambo. But it all has a timeline and y'all are really good at executing at what you do, obviously. Okay, next question. What's your McDonald's order?
Ooh.
I want to fuel myself like a Green Beret.
Man, so I don't eat a lot of McDonald's, but I actually like it. So I had to drive out. I was driving the other day and I actually stopped at McDonald's and I got a sausage McGriddle and it was delicious.
Ooh,
so
okay, yeah,
if you can make it for breakfast time, it's going to be a breakfast call for me. You can't go wrong with sausage McGriddle.
Okay, yeah. Nice. All right. Yeah, some of these are. What was your first Article 15 for?
I don't think I ever got an Article 15.
Oh, you were a good squirrel.
I think so. Now, but it's really weird. So I got called into CID for an investigation one time, and I have, for the life of me, have no idea what it was for. I remember going to the building and having to talk to someone about it. It clearly wasn't about me. I'm sure it was about someone else, but that was like the closest I ever got to like really getting.
Okay.
Now, I will say this: I have done things that I should have gotten an Article 15 for. When I was in the medic course, I definitely should have been kicked out of the course, but and not for anything crazy, crazy, just like fighting and stuff on the week, get drunk and fighting, nothing like crazy, bury a body or anything. But
totally understandable.
We wound up showing up really late for class that day, and everyone in class was trying to help us, giving us razors to shave our faces, here, eat our lunch and stuff. We had to go stand on the carpet, and I got super lucky because there was a really cool cadre. And he was like, look, these dudes are good dudes. It was me and my friend who got killed later on. These dudes are really good dudes. Let me handle it. Mm-hmm. And the commander let him handle it. And we were on like staff duty 24 or 12 on, 12 off for 2 months every weekend. We had to show up an hour before PT and just get smoked for an hour before we went to regular PT. But we did it all, and he kept us in there, and we both went on to do awesome things. And so it was that was like one of the biggest, some of the old guard are still here. Some of those old dudes that like to fucking fight and be SF guys. And I think he saw that in us. A lot of 18 Deltas are nerds. I have some nerd tendencies too. Like you have to be a Delta. Okay. And so I think he was like, wait, these two dudes were like out like beating people up in bars and drinking. He's like, all right, we need to keep these guys. So he saved our asses for sure. And I'm super grateful for it.
Yeah, I love that. That's good. And I appreciate the honesty. That's something that I myself and the audience. So thank you for answering those questions from these ding dongs.
Of course.
Appreciate it.
I love those ding dongs.
So with that being said, so you said you finished up Oregon, you got out of there, and what you're doing now. So I see that you have a like the shop for Sticky Green Beret. You're making the memes, you're keeping it real, you're slinging the shenanigans on Instagram. So tell me a little bit of what you're doing now and just how life is going.
So I married into a like fourth generation cattle ranch. So I've been doing some ranching out there. I know not recently. I told you earlier, I wound up hurting my back really bad recently and waiting on surgery. So that's slowed the ranching down a little bit. But we are finishing up a house and moving out to the ranch permanently, which I'm super excited about. I'm tired of having to pay to go shoot at a civilian range when I could just go shoot wherever I want out there, which would be super nice. And yeah, doing the Sticky Green Beret thing again. I'm like flying the airplane while I'm building it. I didn't really ever expect this to be anything. And one day someone was like, "Hey, were you going to make stickers?" And now I've got like stickers and flags and shirts and all this stuff or whatever. And so I'm trying to get better at learning to manage that. I love you guys for this, but like every time I make a drop, it sells out in 3 days. And then I'm like waiting until I get more and whatever. And so it's like you look at my stuff and it's like all over the place. So I'm going to try and tighten up and buckle in on that. And then I have something pretty big in the works that hopefully New Year's or around New Year's will be coming out. Super excited about it. I'm working with some really awesome people that are far more knowledgeable than I am, but I'm going to be doing a little podcast thing here pretty soon. And it's a really cool concept that nobody else is doing right now. And so we're super excited about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely keep me updated so that I can support you with that. Definitely.
Absolutely. I'm going to have you on there and grill you after this.
Yes. Oh, good.
I'm just kidding.
No, you better. But is it fun, like collaborating with like, people in the community? The artwork from some of your stickers is really cool. The chicken. Wait, was that from Wild One Designs?
Wild Phase, yeah. She's awesome. Super awesome. And it turned out perfectly. I've been waiting to get another piece from her for a while, and then I have this thing coming right now, so maybe get some new artwork from her for that. And so it's she is awesome. Her art is awesome. Everything she puts out, everybody loves it. So super excited to have that opportunity again.
Okay. Sounds like you got some good stuff in the works. I'm definitely really excited to see all that. But so these days you're just taking care of yourself, just getting ready for surgery soon and enjoying the holidays.
Yeah, we went to Houston for Thanksgiving. My mom and her family all live down in Houston, so we went down there and did that, like flip-flop Christmas and Thanksgiving with the family. So it was my family Thanksgiving, her family Christmas this year.
Okay.
So it's nice doing Christmas here, not having to drive. We get to be in sweatpants for the entire weekend, and I'm looking forward to staying here.
Yeah, that's good. I feel that. I'm also in sweatpants.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one more question for you and then we'll close things up. But Alex, thank you so much for just giving us a little bit of insight in your journey and your life so far. And it's really good to see you doing very well. But I want to ask you, what does resilience look like for you?
Man, that's a great question. For me, at the basics level, it's just not quitting, like not giving up. And from the time I was a kid and through the military and even now, like just not giving up. When I was in selection, day one, I picked a guy that I was like, there's no way this dude is going to make it. Like, and who am I to judge? No idea. Right. I'm like, he's not going to make it. And every day I'd find him in formation. I'm like, all right, he's still here. I better still be here too. And so, I've been super blessed to not really care a whole lot what other people think for a long time. I've always just done my own thing, and you like it or you don't or whatever. For me, it's always been a competition with myself versus with other people, where I'm the one that has to get up and look in the mirror tomorrow if I quit or give up, or I'm the guy that. So for me, it's like a me versus me battle all the time, and I'm just trying to beat myself. But it's like if I'm competing against myself all the time, like that quit or give up or whatever never really enters the picture, because in the end I'm just going to fail myself. Like,
I think I know what you mean by that. It's if you cared what people thought and you let that hold you back or affect your momentum and your progress and the way that you carry yourself, I think and it goes back to how sometimes the community can be a little bit toxic, but I'm not sure if I really see that with the Green Beret community, but it's almost like people hate to see you doing well or better than them, when really you don't care what anyone else is thinking. You want them to succeed as well, but you're
Mhm.
just focused on you because,
Yeah.
like you said, you're the one dealing with the consequences or the blessings of continuing or quitting.
For sure. And you hear all the time about how you become the people you surround yourself with, or you are who you surround yourself with. On one side, it's great being surrounded by dudes in the community with a common goal because you're there to build each other up and help everybody complete the mission.
Yeah.
On the flip side, in the internet land or whatever, and this is one of the things that I think is the not great thing about connectivity is that you can also find 1,000 people that will help you make an excuse. You can find
Mm,
whole forums of people that will sit around and coddle you and say, "Oh, it wasn't meant to be," and but if you put those blinders on and you don't listen to any of that, their excuses can't become your excuses. Like you only have yourself. And
yeah.
so when I say that it's me versus me, and I'm grateful to not really care so much what's going on over here, it's because that stuff will start to influence you. Is no matter whether you want it to or not,
Yeah.
that stuff will start to become part of your mental process as well. So like I keep it lean and mean. It's me. I'm gonna do it. If I don't, I have to deal with it, and that's it.
Yeah, that's really good. I think more people really need to have some sort of positive reinforcement and perspective like that, because it is very easy to fall into the dysfunctional veteran thing or whatever, or
Mhm.
make excuses for anybody involved. I'm really glad that you keep it real with yourself and that you're committed to growth and to continuing and resiliency. So thank you for that, Alex. Is there anything else that you want to leave the audience with?
Um, no, really, the only thing that I would say is that if you're having a hard time, reach out to somebody. Everybody, there's somebody that cares about everybody. Everybody would rather get a distressing call from you than a call from your mom the next day. So everybody's dealing with something. We all have time to help somebody else out. If somebody calls you or you need to call someone, just reciprocate it. You never know what people are going through.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for that, Alex. Thank you so much for joining me today and
Yeah, it was fun.
letting me pick at your brain a little bit. I tell all my guests that they're always welcome to come back on. So if you want to do a little part two, you're
Cool.
always welcome. But yeah, for people who are tuning in, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at the Sticky Green Beret, and I make all my updates through there. There'll be a offshoot that happens whenever the new stuff starts, but you can get everything there for now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. I appreciate you coming on.
No problem. Thank you.